I told her, if you go on that trip with him, we're done. She just laughed, packed her bikinis, and left for 3 days with her old college ex. When she returned and found her key no longer worked, she began to tremble. But discovering the truth about her perfect little getaway, that was going to completely destroy her. My name is Dalton Kessler. I'm 49 years old, and for the last 15, I've worked as an aircraft mechanic at Denver International. It's a good job with a steady paycheck, the kind of work that keeps planes in the sky and families safe. I also thought I had a good marriage. That is, until the morning my wife Pandora decided to see just how far a man could be pushed. She came downstairs that Tuesday morning holding two swimsuits in her hands, like they were exhibits in a trial. One was a conservative red one piece. The other barely had enough fabric to cover a postage stamp. Her dark hair was already done. Her makeup was perfect. And she had that look in her eye, the one that said she was about to start something. Which one makes me look more free? Pandora asked, holding up the tiny black bikini. I didn't have to ask who she wanted to look free for. We both knew. Dory, I said, using the pet name I'd called her for 22 years. Are you planning on swimming or putting on a show? She laughed, but it wasn't the warm chuckle I fell in love with back in college. This was colder, more calculated. Oh, come on, Dalton. Donovan and I are just catching up. It's been years since we really talked. Donovan Pike, her college ex, who had seeped back into her life like oil through a bad gasket. I'd watched her light up whenever his name flashed on her phone. I'd watched her start buying new clothes, new perfume, start talking about finding herself at 46. I set down my coffee mug and looked her straight in the eye. If you go on that trip with him, we're done. The words came out steady. No shouting, no drama. Just a simple statement of fact, the same way I'd tell her the weather forecast. Pandora froze for a beat. Then that wry little smile spread across her face. You're not serious, Dalton. You don't do ultimatums. You're Mr. Stable, remember? Mr. Quietly Fix Everything. I nodded slowly. Exactly, which is why you should listen. She shook her head, already turning away. I need to stretch my wings, Dalton. I need to remember who I was before I became just this. She gestured around our kitchen, at our home, at our life. And what am I supposed to be while you're remembering? I asked. You'll be here, she said, without even a glance back, like you always are. And that's when I realized it. She didn't just take me for granted. She had forgotten I was capable of leaving. 22 years of being the rock, the reliable one, the man who fixed problems instead of causing them. She had mistaken my patience for weakness. I watched her pack that afternoon, humming songs that were too young for her, posting cryptic messages on social media about new adventures. She kissed my cheek on her way out the door, as if she were just running to the grocery store. Don't stay up too late while I'm gone, Pandora called over her shoulder. You've got your tools and your sports channel, right? I didn't answer. I just stood at the window and watched the Uber disappear down the street, carrying my wife toward another man's arms and away from everything we had built. That's when I went to my workshop and opened the one drawer I had always hoped I would never need. Inside was an envelope with Plan D, written in my own hand. Sometimes, the quietest men make the loudest moves. 3 hours after Pandora's plane was in the air, I was sitting in my truck, across from the law offices of Morrison and Associates, the envelope on the passenger seat. I had been waiting 6 months for this exact moment. Some men wait until the house is burning to look for the fire extinguisher. Smart men keep one at the ready. Inside that envelope was everything: title transfers, trust restructuring documents, lease agreements, all perfectly legal, all perfectly final. I learned a long time ago that preparation beats panic every time. My phone buzzed. A text from my niece, Raquel. "Uncle Dalton, is it time?" I texted back. "It's time. You ready?" "Already on my way. Keys, kitchen counter, guest room. You know the drill." Raquel had been my backup for months. 25. Sharp as a tack. And she'd never liked the way Pandora treated me. When I'd asked for her help coordinating this weekend, her only question was, "What took you so long?" The lawyer's office was exactly what you'd expect: dark wood, heavy books, the smell of expensive decisions. Morrison himself was a lean, gray-haired man with the kind of handshake that told you he'd seen every kind of human disaster. "Mr. Kessler," he said, settling behind his desk. "Are you certain about this?" I slid the envelope across to him. "Every page is signed, witnessed, and notarized. I just need you to file them with the proper agencies." Morrison opened the documents, his experienced eyes scanning each page. The property transfer moved our home from joint ownership into a trust I'd set up years ago. The lease agreement installed a woman named Cordelia Cross, someone Raquel knew through university contacts, into our house as a legal tenant. Every detail had been planned. "This is comprehensive," Morrison noted. "Your wife will have no legal recourse." "None," I confirmed. "She signed off on the trust structure back in 2019 when we were doing estate planning. Said she didn't need to read the fine print because she trusted me." I almost smiled at that. Trust, after all, works both ways. Morrison nodded slowly. "The filing fees will be processed by Monday morning. By the time she returns from her trip, this will all be in effect." I stood and shook his hand. "I appreciate your discretion." "Of course. Though I have to ask, what if she comes back early?" I headed for the door. "She won't. She's having too much fun posting pictures of her freedom." Outside, I checked my phone. Sure enough, there was Pandora's latest Instagram post, a selfie from the airport, captioned, "Adventure awaits." She had no idea that while she was chasing her past, I was busy foreclosing on her future. 22 years of marriage had taught me one thing: Pandora always underestimated the quiet ones. Today, that mistake was going to cost her everything. I drove home to an empty house, but for the first time in months, it felt peaceful. Saturday morning brought the first photos. A candid shot from dinner: 3 wine glasses, 3 plates, and a man's hand that was definitely not Donovan's. Donovan wore a cheap digital watch with a cracked screen. This hand wore a gold Rolex, and the skin looked older, more weathered. Someone else was funding this little escapade. Someone Pandora hadn't mentioned. I screenshotted the image and zoomed in until the pixels started to break. There, reflected in the corner of the table, was a bottle I recognized: Opus One Cabernet, an $800 bottle of wine. Donovan Pike was a personal trainer who drove a 10-year-old Honda. He didn't buy wine that cost more than his car payment. My phone rang. It was Raquel. "Uncle Dalton, you have to see this. I'm sending you a link." The link led to the resort's website, specifically their restaurant page. "The Sunset Terrace, exclusive dining, reservation only, dress code enforced." I called the resort directly. "Terrace reservations, Miguel speaking. Hello, I'm trying to reach my wife. She's dining with you tonight. Pandora Kessler." I'm sorry, sir. We have no one by that name on our reservation list for today. Maybe under her maiden name? Pandora Royce? No Royce either, sir. What about the gentleman she's with? Donovan Pike? No reservation under Pike, sir. I hung up, my jaw tight. She wasn't just cheating. She was being sponsored by someone with serious money. Someone who could get my wife drunk and keep his name off the reservation books. That's when the second photo came through. Pandora on the beach. But this time, the background told another story. The logo on the beach umbrellas wasn't from the place she told me they were staying. This was the Ritz-Carlton, not the Holiday Inn she'd mentioned. Someone was paying premium prices for her infidelity, and they wanted to remain anonymous. 22 years of marriage, and I'd never seen Pandora at a Ritz-Carlton. Whoever this third party was, he had deep pockets and loose morals. I forwarded everything to Morrison with a short message. Expedite. File everything first thing Monday morning. Some discoveries change everything. This one just confirmed I was doing the right thing. Sunday evening, Cordelia Cross arrived at my door with one suitcase and the quiet confidence of someone who had survived life's worst surprises. At 54, she was elegant without trying to be young, and smart without needing to prove it. Mr. Kessler, she said, offering a firm handshake. Thank you for this opportunity. Raquel had found Cordelia through her university network. A former real estate executive, recently widowed, with no drama and no baggage. She needed a quiet place to restart, and I needed someone who could handle whatever Pandora threw at her. Call me Dalton, I said, stepping aside to let her in. Welcome home. Cordelia moved through the house as if she were conducting an inspection, not judging, but assessing. In the kitchen, she ran a finger over the granite countertops Pandora had insisted on, but never took care of. In the living room, she straightened the throw pillows that had been carelessly tossed for months. Your wife has interesting taste, Cordelia said diplomatically. Had, I corrected her, past tense. She nodded, understanding immediately. The lease agreement Raquel showed me is quite thorough. 6 months minimum, utilities included. First month paid up front. That's right, and Cordelia, I said, handing her the house keys. Whatever happens when she gets back, you don't negotiate with her. This is your home now. I'll handle any drama. Cordelia smiled, and for the first time in months, I remembered what it was like to be around a woman who didn't require constant entertainment. I've been through a high-stakes divorce myself. I know how this works. Women like your wife think they can intimidate other women into backing down. They've just never met someone like me. That night, I helped Cordelia get settled in the master bedroom. She'd brought her own linens, her own art, even her own coffee maker. By the time we were done, the room looked nothing like the space Pandora had left behind. One question, Cordelia said, as I was heading to the guest room. Why are you being so generous with a complete stranger? I paused in the doorway. Because you're not the one who broke our wedding vows. And because every man deserves to come home to someone who actually wants to be there. Cordelia's expression softened. She has no idea what she's throwing away, does she? No, I said, but she's about to find out. Monday morning, Morrison called to confirm. All documents were filed, all legal protections in place. Pandora's flight landed at 3:47 p.m. I'd be at work when she arrived, doing what I always did, keeping planes in the air while everything else on the ground fell apart. The difference was, this time, I wasn't falling with it. On Tuesday afternoon, I was under the cowling of a Boeing 737 when my phone started vibrating like an angry hornet. 6 missed calls from Pandora, 3 voicemails, and a string of text messages that went from confused to angry to desperate in the space of 20 minutes. The first text, "Why won't the garage open? Did you change the code?" Then, "Dalton, this isn't funny. I'm tired and I just want to get inside." And finally, "Call me right now." I didn't call. I had a hydraulic system to inspect, and frankly, watching her panic from a distance was more satisfying than I'd expected. Around 4 o'clock, Raquel called. "Uncle Dalton, you need to hear what just happened. Your wife showed up at the house and couldn't get in. She spent 20 minutes trying different codes, checking windows, even tried the hidden key spot. When that didn't work, she rang the doorbell." I could picture it. Pandora, standing on her own front porch like a stranger, probably still in her oversized sunglasses and vacation clothes, expecting the house to welcome her back as if nothing had changed. "Cordelia answered the door," Raquel continued. "Very polite, very professional. Told Pandora she'd have to speak with the property management company about any access issues." "Property management company? That's apparently me," Cordelia said, and gave her my number. I smiled. Cordelia was handling this exactly right. Cool, legal, and unshakable. And what did Pandora do? Started screaming, saying it was her house, demanding to know who Cordelia was. Cordelia just told her she was the current legal tenant and closed the door. Then Pandora called me, screaming about lawyers and theft and how I couldn't just lock her out of her own home. I told her everything was perfectly legal and that she should have read what she signed. By 5:30 p.m., Pandora's calls had stopped. Instead, a message arrived from an unknown number. "This is Richard Blackstone, Mrs. Kessler's attorney. We need to discuss this situation immediately." I forwarded the text to Morrison with a simple note: "Game time." Morrison called back within minutes. "Dalton, I spoke with this Blackstone fellow. He's threatening all kinds of legal action, but it's pure bluster. Everything we filed is bulletproof." "What did you tell him?" That evening, on the way to my rented apartment, I drove past the house. My house. The one where I'd lived for 15 years. Where I'd built a workshop, planted trees, and fixed every single thing that broke. Now, warm light spilled from its windows, illuminating someone inside who actually wanted to be there. Pandora's car was parked across the street. She was just sitting behind the wheel, staring at the house as if she could will the locks to turn back time. I pulled into the driveway of my new apartment 2 blocks away. Tomorrow, Pandora would begin to learn that some decisions can't be undone. And honestly, I was sleeping better than I had in months. Wednesday morning, she brought out the nuclear option. Pandora had hired Richard Blackstone, the kind of lawyer who advertises on bus benches, promising to fight for your rights. His office smelled of cheap cologne and desperation. Morrison had already warned me this was coming. "Dalton, men like Blackstone make their money on intimidation and bravado. When that doesn't work, they usually fold quickly." The call came at 7 in the morning as I was getting ready for work. "Mr. Kessler, this is Richard Blackstone, representing your wife. I'm calling to inform you that you have 24 hours to restore Mrs. Kessler's access to the marital residence, or we will proceed with an emergency injunction." I'd been expecting this. "Mr. Blackstone, you might want to consult the property records before you file anything. That house ceased to be marital property in 2019. Sir, I don't care what legal tricks you think you've pulled. Arizona is a community property state, and the house is in a revocable trust that your client voluntarily signed." I cut him off. "A trust that she triggered when she abandoned the residence for more than 48 hours without notice. Silence. Then, we'll see about that. 2 hours later, Morrison called me at work. Blackstone filed the injunction. The judge took one look at our documentation and dismissed the motion without even scheduling a hearing. Told Blackstone he should have done his homework before wasting the court's time. So what now? Now they'll probably try to claim fraud or duress, anything to invalidate the trust documents. But they can't. Pandora signed everything with witnesses present, with her own counsel, and she waived the 7-day legal review period. That afternoon, I got a call from Cordelia. Dalton, your wife showed up again, this time with a locksmith. What happened? I called the police, showed them the lease agreement and my ID confirming this is my legal address. The officers explained to Mrs. Kessler that what she was attempting constituted breaking and entering. How'd she take it? Poorly. She started screaming about me being a homewrecker, how you can't just replace someone with a stranger. The cops were not impressed. That night, Rachel forwarded me a Facebook post from Pandora. When someone you trusted for 24 years destroys your life while you're trying to find yourself, some people aren't who you thought they were. Betrayed, #heartbroken, #homeless. The comments were brutal. Her sister. Actions have consequences, Pandora. Her college best friend. Girl, you made your bed. Even a yoga instructor chimed in. Perhaps use this time for self-reflection. I closed the app and leaned back in my chair. Pandora had spent years curating a social media image of the perfect wife and mother. Now that facade was cracking, and everyone could see the truth underneath. My phone buzzed with one last message from her. Please, Dalton, can we just talk? I made a mistake, but this is too much. For the first time since this all began, I replied, You didn't make a mistake, Pandora. You made a choice. Now, live with it. Then I blocked her number. Some bridges deserve to be burned. Thursday night, I was having dinner with Cordelia when Pandora finally worked up the courage for a direct confrontation. We were sitting at the kitchen table, my kitchen table, in my house, sharing a meal Cordelia had made from scratch when the doorbell rang. I'll get it, Cordelia said calmly, wiping her hands on a napkin. Are you sure? It's probably... I know exactly who it is, she replied, standing up, and it's time for a proper introduction. I heard the front door open. Then Pandora's shrill, demanding voice. Who the hell are you, and what are you doing in my house? Cordelia's response was measured, professional. I'm Cordelia Cross. I live here. And you are? I'm Pandora Kessler. This is my house. I'm afraid there's been some confusion, Cordelia said. This residence is currently leased to me through a legal contract. Perhaps you should speak with the property management company. I moved to the entryway, staying back, but close enough to intervene if needed. Pandora stood on the porch, decked out in designer clothes that screamed expensive vacation, her face a mask of crimson rage and disbelief. Dalton, she shouted when she saw me, tell this woman to get out of our house. It's not our house anymore, Pandora, I said quietly. You made sure of that when you chose your weekend with Donovan over 24 years of marriage. I made a mistake. People make mistakes, Dalton. No, I replied, moving to stand beside Cordelia. A mistake is when you forget to buy milk. What you did was make a calculated decision to throw away everything we built together. Pandora's eyes darted between us, and I saw the moment she understood what she was seeing. Cordelia and I weren't just landlord and tenant. We were comfortable with each other, natural, like a couple who had already found their rhythm. You're sleeping with her, Pandora whispered, her voice breaking. Cordelia spoke before I could. Where I sleep is none of your concern. What you should be concerned about is that you are trespassing on private property. Trespassing? This is insane. Dalton, you can't just replace me with some stranger. I didn't replace you, I said. You left. I moved on. Pandora started to cry then. That ugly, ragged crying that comes when someone realizes they've lost something they can never get back. Please, she begged. I'll end it with Donovan. I'll come home. We can go to therapy. We can fix this. I looked at her standing there, in her vacation clothes, wearing jewelry I'd never seen before, likely paid for by her mysterious benefactor. She looked desperate, lost, and completely alien to me. Pandora, I said softly, there's nothing left to fix. You shattered this beyond repair. Cordelia took a step forward. Mrs. Kessler, I think it's time for you to leave. If you have legal matters to discuss, please have your attorney contact the appropriate parties. Pandora gave us one last look, then turned and walked away. I watched her get into her car, a rental, I noticed, since she'd apparently left hers at the airport. Well, Cordelia said, closing the door. That went better than I expected. Better? She smiled. She could have thrown a rock through the window. We went back to dinner, but something had shifted. The confrontation was over, and Pandora had finally realized her old life was gone for good. I was in my workshop at the airport, surrounded by the organized chaos of aircraft parts and diagnostic equipment. The familiar smell of hydraulic fluid and metal made the news easier to swallow. How much worse? The man in the resort photos, Morrison said over the phone. He's not just some rich guy. He's Vincent Castellano, owner of Castellano Construction. He's married, 3 kids, and he's under federal investigation for bid rigging and tax evasion. I put down my wrench. Federal investigation. It just keeps getting better. Your wife has been depositing cash into a separate account for 6 months. It's up to 25 grand. All deposits are just under the federal reporting limit. The pieces began to click into place. Pandora's sudden interest in girls' nights out, the new jewelry, the new clothes, the expensive tastes she'd never had before. She wasn't just cheating. She was being paid for it. Morrison, what does this mean legally? It means your wife could be an accomplice to money laundering. And it means that when the feds come knocking, and they will, you want to be as far away from this mess as possible. That afternoon, I called Cordelia at the house. Cordelia, we need to talk tonight. Something's come up. Something serious. Federal investigation serious. When I got home that evening, Cordelia was waiting with coffee and a worried look. Tell me, she said simply. I laid it all out. Vincent Castellano, the money, the federal investigation. Cordelia listened without interrupting, her expression growing graver with each detail. Dalton, she said when I finished, you know what this means, don't you? It's not just that your wife is in serious trouble. It's that you could be too. Spouses can be held liable for each other's financial crimes, especially if there's any question about what you knew and when. I'd never even considered that. What do you suggest? Full documentation of everything. Bank records, credit card statements, anything that proves you had no knowledge of these transactions. And you need to report this to the authorities before they discover it on their own. That night, I lay awake thinking about the woman I'd married 24 years ago. The college student who was smart, funny, and honest. How did she become someone who would take money from a married man under federal investigation? Saturday morning, I made 2 calls. The first was to Morrison, authorizing him to cooperate fully with any federal inquiry. The second was to the local FBI field office in Denver. Special Agent Rodriguez speaking. Agent Rodriguez, my name is Dalton Kessler. I have information regarding Vincent Castellano that I think you need to hear. Some marriages end with arguments, lawyers, or tears. Mine was ending with federal agents and money laundering charges. But at least it was ending with honesty, which was more than I could say for how it had been lived. 3 weeks later, Agent Rodriguez called with an update that made everything crystal clear. Mr. Kessler, we've arrested Vincent Castellano and 3 of his associates on federal charges. Your wife's name came up during the interrogations. I was at home with Cordelia, enjoying the quiet Sunday morning that had become our routine. Coffee, the newspaper, and actual conversation instead of complaints and demands. What kind of charges? I asked. Money laundering, tax evasion, bribery of public officials. Castellano has been paying off city council members to secure construction contracts. Your wife was apparently one of the go-betweens. Cordelia looked up from her crossword puzzle, concern in her eyes. Agent Rodriguez, what does this mean for Pandora? She's facing federal charges as an accessory. We found payment records totaling over $40,000, all funneled through her personal accounts. She claims she didn't know what the money was for, but the evidence suggests otherwise. That afternoon, Rachel called with news from Pandora's side of the family. Uncle Dalton, they arrested Aunt Pandora. They took her from my mom's house this morning. How is she handling it? Not well. She keeps demanding to talk to you. Says you're the only one who can help her. I looked at Cordelia, who was listening to my side of the conversation. She gave a slight shake of her head. Rachel, tell her to talk to her lawyer. I can't help her with this. She doesn't have a lawyer anymore. Blackstone dropped his Sarton as a client the minute federal charges were mentioned. That night, my phone rang. Unknown number, but I recognized the background hum of a prison phone system. Dalton? Pandora's voice was small, broken. Please, don't hang up. What do you want, Pandora? I need help. I need a lawyer. I need bail money. I never meant for any of this to happen. What did you think was going to happen when you started taking money from a man under federal investigation? I didn't know. Vincent never told me about any investigation. He said it was just payment for companionship. Payment for companionship. I repeated the word slowly. Pandora, do you realize what you're describing? Silence. Then a low sob. I need money for a lawyer, she whispered. I can't help you with that. You're my husband. You have to help me. Ex-husband. The divorce was finalized yesterday while you were being processed. The line went quiet, except for the sound of her ragged breathing. Dalton, please. I know I made mistakes, but I never wanted to hurt you. Pandora, I said, my voice gentle but firm. You didn't just hurt me. You destroyed 24 years of trust for money from a criminal. That's not a mistake. That's a choice. What am I supposed to do? That's no longer my problem. But I'll give you one piece of free advice. Tell the truth to anyone who will listen. It's your only chance. I ended the call and turned off my phone. Cordelia reached out and took my hand. You did the right thing. Did I? Yes, you can't save someone who doesn't want to be saved. Outside, snow had begun to fall, blanketing everything in a clean, white silence. 6 months later, I stood in the backyard of my house, truly my house now, watching Cordelia plant roses where Pandora's neglected vegetable garden used to be. The contrast was striking. Careful planning instead of impulsiveness. Lasting beauty instead of projects abandoned after a few weeks. Hand me the watering can, Cordelia asked, brushing dirt from her knees. I passed it to her, marveling at how natural this all felt. Cordelia never needed constant entertainment or validation. She found joy in the simple things. A good book, a home-cooked meal, watching the planes lift off from our balcony at dusk. Any news about the trial? She asked. Morrison called this morning. Pandora took a plea deal. 3 years in federal prison, full restitution to the state. Cordelia nodded, never taking her eyes from the roses. How do you feel about that? Honestly, relieved, it's finally over. The doorbell rang. I found Raquel on the porch with David Porter, Cordelia's son, and as of last month, Raquel's fiancé. Their relationship had grown naturally, helping to ease life's transitions, and seeing them together reminded me of what a true partnership looked like. Uncle Dalton, Raquel said, embracing me. We have news. Good news, we hope. David smiled. We set the date, June 15th, here in the backyard, if that's all right with you and Mom. Cordelia appeared at my side, soil still on her hands, but with a smile wider than any I had seen in years. A garden wedding, she said. I love it. That night, the four of us sat on the back porch, watching the planes descend toward the airport. It was the same view I'd had for 15 years, but everything else had changed. Instead of complaints about the noise and air quality, we talked of travel plans, wedding details, and Cordelia's idea of turning a spare room into a home office. Dalton, David said, I want to thank you for everything you've done for my mother. After Dad died, she thought she'd never feel at home anywhere again. She saved me too, I replied, taking Cordelia's hand. Sometimes, the best thing that can happen to a man is discovering he's stronger than he thought. My phone vibrated with a message from an unknown number. For a moment, my heart seized, thinking it was Pandora, somehow contacting me from prison. Instead, it was from Donald Van Pike. Heard about Pandora. Sorry, man. Hope you're okay. I showed the message to Cordelia, who simply raised an eyebrow. Are you going to write back? No, I said, deleting the message. That chapter is closed. As the sun sank behind the mountains, I realized I'd learned something important about marriage. It's not about finding someone who will never leave you. It's about building something worth staying for, with someone who wants to be there. Pandora left because she thought the grass was greener on the other side. She just discovered it was astroturf, expensive and fake. Cordelia chose to stay because she understood that true happiness comes from cultivating something real with someone who values what you are creating together. At 49 years old, I was starting over. And for the first time in a very long time, I was exactly where I wanted to be.